I was holding a paper plate when my mother destroyed my life. 43 people in that living room. I know that because I counted them while she talked. Well, Patricia Cunningham stood in her pearls and her church smile and told every relative we owned that I would be paying for my sister's wedding. Every single dollar. 87,000 of them. Nobody laughed. I waited for someone to laugh. My sister Vanessa was by the fireplace in a cream blouse, wearing a ring I'd never seen before. She wasn't laughing either. She was doing that thing with her mouth, pressing her lips together just enough to hide the smile underneath. My father Gary was sitting in his armchair, looking at the carpet, completely still, like a man who knew this was coming and had made his peace with it before I walked through the door. My aunt started clapping. I said, "I'm sorry, what?" Not because I hadn't heard, because I needed 3 seconds. My mother walked toward me, close enough to lower her voice, but not so low the room couldn't catch it. "You have the savings, Jasmine. Vanessa needs this. We all need this." She paused. "That's what family does." I had heard that sentence my entire life. Every time something was taken from me, it ended the same way. The summer writing program at 16, that's what family does. The 3 years I spent paying down a debt with my name on it but not my signature, that's what family does. I set the paper plate down on the end table, very carefully. My hands were shaking and I didn't want anyone to see. "I need some air," I said. Vanessa made a sound, not words, just a sound that meant, "Here we go." My mother caught my wrist before I reached the hallway. Not hard, just enough. The way you hold a door open when you want someone to know you can close it. "You walk out right now and you are done. You are no longer my daughter." I looked at her hand on my wrist. I looked at my father, who had not moved, had not spoken, had not once looked up from that carpet. Then I walked out. I sat in my car in the driveway for 4 minutes before I could drive. It was 28 degrees. I didn't turn the heat on. I needed to feel something real because nothing inside that house had felt real at all. My phone started going before I hit the highway. Mom, Vanessa, Dad, Aunt Carol, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 6 years. I didn't answer any of them. Somewhere around exit 44, I remembered something. A metal box my grandmother had pressed into my hands the week before she died. "Don't open it until you need to," she said. I'd carried it through 4 apartments and never touched it. I drove the rest of the way to Columbus with both hands on the wheel and that box sitting in the back of my mind like a question I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. I was wrong about one thing that night. I thought the worst moment was when my mother made that announcement in front of 43 people. It wasn't. The worst moment came 3 days later, when I finally opened the box and found out that everything I'd been told about my own life was a lie. My grandmother kept her secrets in a fireproof metal box the size of a shoebox. I found it under my bed at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, still in the moving blanket I'd wrapped it in 4 years ago. The key was taped to the bottom, her handwriting on a strip of masking tape. "For Jasmine, when it's time." I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and opened it. The first thing I pulled out was a photograph. Me and Vanessa, maybe 8 and 10 years old, at some family cookout in the backyard. Vanessa was in the center of the frame, laughing, sparkler in hand, my father lifting her up by the waist. I was at the edge of the photo, almost out of it, holding a trash bag. On the back, my grandmother had written, "Jasmine cleaned the whole yard that day. Patricia told her good girls don't ask for thank yous." I put it face down on the floor and kept going. There were bank statements. An education savings account, my name on it, opened when I was 7. My grandmother had been depositing into it for years. By the time I turned 17, it held just over $38,000. I had asked my parents about a college fund once. My mother told me there was barely anything in it, that money was tight, that I should apply for scholarships like everyone else. Someone had made 4 withdrawals from that account between my sophomore and senior year of high school. The memo lines were in my father's handwriting. Vanessa, competition fees. Vanessa, coaching. Vanessa, new equipment. Vanessa, NY trip. $31,000, gone before I ever saw the inside of a college application. I sat there on the floor for a long time. There was more. A letter my mother had written to a summer academic program I'd been accepted to at 16, withdrawing my application without telling me. A copy of a will, my grandmother's, filed with an attorney in Dayton 3 months before she died. I read that part twice. She had left me something. Not just the box, not just the photographs and the bank statements and the careful, devastating record of everything that had been taken from me. She had left me the lake house, 40 minutes outside Columbus. The same lake house my mother had told every relative was sold years ago to cover medical bills. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Mom's not doing well. You're really going to let this go on over money? Call her." I set the phone face down next to the photograph. My grandmother knew. She'd watched it happen for years, watched my parents treat Vanessa's life as the real one and mine as the budget version, and she had spent the last years of her life quietly building me a way out, keeping records, copying documents, writing dates in the margins with the careful handwriting of someone who understood that memory could be argued with, but paper couldn't. At the bottom of the box was a note, 1 page, her cursive, small and steady. "Jasmine, if you're reading this, they finally asked for too much. Don't let them tell you what you remember isn't real. I kept the records because I knew one day you'd need proof, not for them, but for yourself. The lake house is yours. I made sure of it. Do not give it away." I folded the note, put it back. Then I picked up my phone and searched for a real estate attorney in Columbus. I wasn't calling my mother, but someone was going to hear from me very soon. Our name was Carol Reeves, 40-something, no nonsense, the kind of woman who listened without writing anything down until she'd heard everything. Her office was on the 4th floor of a building off High Street, framed law degree, 1 plant, no small talk. I put the box on her desk and walked her through it. She didn't react to most of it. The education account withdrawals, the withdrawn application, the photographs, she absorbed it all quietly. But when I got to the will, she stopped me. "Who handled your grandmother's estate?" I already knew where this was going. "My mother." Carol looked at the document for a long moment. "And she told you the lake house was sold?" "To cover medical bills, yes." "Was there a sale record? Anything filed?" "I don't know. I never thought to look. I was 24 when my grandmother died. My mother handled everything, and I stopped. I believed her." Carol nodded like that was the most predictable sentence she'd heard all week. She pulled up the county property records on her computer. It took about 90 seconds. The lake house had not been sold. It had been transferred, quietly, 8 months after my grandmother's death. The trust was controlled by my mother. I gripped the edge of the chair. "Can she do that?" "That depends on the exact language of the will and what authority she had as executor," Carol said. "But if your grandmother's intent was clearly documented and that transfer contradicts it," she looked at me, "you may have a strong case." I thought about my mother standing in that living room. Pearls, church smile. That's what family does. She had been doing this for years, not just taking, administrating, organizing the taking, making it look like love while she moved money and property out of my reach, one careful step at a time. "There's something else," Carol said. She turned her monitor toward me. I leaned forward and read. My name was showing up in places I hadn't put it. Carol had made some calls, quietly, she said, just preliminary inquiries. A venue outside Dayton was holding a date for Vanessa's wedding. The deposit hadn't been paid yet, but the contact listed as the family's financial guarantor was me, my full name, my phone number. The caterer had the same information. So did the florist. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even been told any of this was happening. Your family told these vendors you were covering the costs, Carol said. Nothing's been charged yet, but the expectation is there, in writing, with your name attached. My phone buzzed on the table between us. I turned it over. A text from Vanessa. The venue needs a decision by Friday. Mom said you just need a little more time. We're not rushing you. I showed Carol the screen. She read it, looked up. Do you want to send a cease and desist, or would you prefer to wait until we have the estate documents in order? How long for the estate documents? 2 weeks, maybe 3? Then we wait, but I want to be in that room when they realize I know about all of it. Carol almost smiled. Almost. I'll start pulling the probate records. I walked out of that office with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope, exactly. Something colder and more useful than hope. My family had spent 30 years treating me like I wouldn't notice, wouldn't push back, wouldn't ever stop being the one who quietly absorbed whatever they needed to unload. They had 2 weeks left to believe that.
Vanessa's dress fitting was at a bridal salon in Beaver Creek, the kind of place with champagne flutes on the counter and a consultant who calls everyone hun. My mother texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Come, this is your last chance to fix things as a family. I went, but I brought a folder. The salon was all white walls and soft lighting and the kind of quiet that costs money to maintain. Vanessa was on a platform in a gown that probably ran $4,000, turning slowly while a seamstress pinned the hem. My mother sat in a velvet chair, daubing her eyes. My father stood near the door with his arms crossed, which was his version of emotional support. Aunt Carol was there too, phone already out, filming like this was a memory worth keeping. The consultant approached me with a tablet. We just need to confirm the payment method for the alterations and the remaining balance on the gown. My mother placed her hand on my arm. Jasmine will handle that. I looked at the consultant. No, I won't. The room shifted. Vanessa stepped down from the platform. Seriously? Her voice was low and tight. Right now? You're doing this right now? I've been doing this for 30 years. You just never had to watch before. My mother laughed, that controlled, social laugh she uses when she's deciding how to handle something in public. She's joking. Jasmine, honey, let's not make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm correcting a misunderstanding. I opened the folder. I contacted every vendor on Vanessa's list, the venue, the caterer, the florist, this salon too. My name is on all of them, my number. In some cases, the phrase family financial guarantor. I looked at my mother. I never agreed to any of it. She didn't flinch. That was the thing about Patricia Cunningham. She didn't flinch. She just recalculated. You're doing this to embarrass your sister. I'm doing this because my attorney asked me to. The word attorney moved through that room like a change in air pressure. My aunt lowered her phone. My father uncrossed his arms. Vanessa's face went carefully blank. You got a lawyer. I did. Over a wedding? Over a lake house, I said. That landed. I watched it land. My mother's expression didn't crack, but something behind her eyes shifted, like a door closing fast, the way people close doors when they realize someone has already seen what's on the other side. My father stepped forward. This is not the place. I agree. The place was Thanksgiving dinner, when you sat in your chair and said nothing while Mom told 43 people I owed $87,000. I would have preferred that conversation instead. He had nothing for that. My mother tried a different angle. She turned to Vanessa, voice soft.
Tell your sister what this day means to you." Vanessa looked at her, then at me, then back at the gown she was still half wearing. Something crossed her face that I hadn't seen before, not guilt exactly, but the early shape of it, like a person who has been comfortable with something for a long time and has just felt it get uncomfortable. "Jasmine," she said, quieter now, can we talk about this at home?" "There's nothing to talk about. I'm not paying for the wedding. I'm not the guarantor on any of these accounts, and if anyone uses my name on another vendor contract, my attorney responds the same day." I closed the folder. "If the venue needs a decision by Friday, you should make it without me in the budget." My mother's composure finally cracked, not dramatically, just a hairline fracture at the edge of her mouth. "You would do this to your own family." "I didn't do anything. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice what was being done to me." I picked up my bag. Aunt Carol had stopped filming. I noticed that. My father had gone back to looking at the floor. Vanessa was still standing on the platform in a dress she hadn't paid for, in a wedding that was built on a foundation that was about to give out. I walked to the door, turned back once. "The lake house wasn't sold, Mom. I know that now. Carol Reeves knows that, and in about 10 days a judge is going to know it too." I left before she could answer. My phone had 14 missed calls by the time I got to my car. I sat in the parking lot and watched them come in, and I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I just felt tired. The deep kind. The kind that lives in your bones after years of bracing for impact. But underneath the tired was something else, something small and steady. It was almost over.
The wedding was canceled on a Thursday. I know because Vanessa texted me at 7 a.m. No greeting, no punctuation, just, "It's off. Preston's done. I hope you're satisfied." I put the phone down and made coffee. I want to tell you I felt nothing. That's not true. I felt something complicated and heavy that I still don't have a clean word for. Not guilt, not satisfaction, something in between, like watching a structure you knew was unsound finally come down and feeling both relieved and sad that it took this long. Here is what happened in those 6 weeks. Carol filed the estate challenge. The probate court pulled the records. The transfer of the lake house, the one my mother had executed quietly 8 months after my grandmother's funeral, was found to contradict the explicit language of the will. My grandmother had not been vague. She had been precise. She had named me. She had dated it. She had signed it in front of 2 witnesses who were not members of our family. My mother had known exactly what that will said. She was the executor. She had read every word of it, and then done what she wanted anyway because she had spent 40 years operating in a family where consequences were something that happened to other people. The settlement took 3 weeks to negotiate. I won't detail every term. What mattered was this: legal control of the lake house returned to me. My parents signed a written acknowledgement that I had no financial obligation to Vanessa's wedding, that I had never agreed to serve as a guarantor, and that they would cease contacting my employer, my vendors, and my personal network on the matter. That document mattered more to me than the property. It was the first time their version of events had been required to sit down in a room with the actual version and sign its name underneath it. Preston called me once during all of this. He sounded exhausted and a little lost. He told me Vanessa had said I volunteered to pay as a gift, that the lake house had always been meant for the family, that I had a history of being difficult during important moments. He wasn't angry, just a man trying to understand why the ground had shifted under him. I told him what I knew. He was quiet for a long time. 2 weeks later, the engagement ended. That was his decision. I had nothing to do with it beyond telling him the truth. My father sent one email. No greeting, 3 sentences. "You've made your point. Your mother is not well. When you're ready to be a daughter again, you know where we are." I printed it, put it in the folder with everything else, did not reply. My mother left voicemails for 2 weeks straight. Some of them were angry,
Some were crying. The last one I listened to, she said, "I only ever did what was best for this family." I deleted it and blocked the number. Not because I stopped feeling anything, because I finally understood that waiting for her to admit what she'd done was the same trap I'd been sitting in my whole life. The idea that if I was patient enough, quiet enough, available enough, she would eventually tell the truth. She wouldn't. Some people would rather rewrite history than survive inside it. Vanessa wrote a letter. An actual letter, handwritten, dropped in my mailbox sometime in January. She said she hated me for what happened, and then she said she hated herself more. She admitted she'd known for years that money meant for me had been redirected. She said she told herself it was fine because I always seemed stronger. That sentence, "You always seemed stronger." I put the letter down and walked away from it for an hour. Stronger. What she meant was easier to take from. What she meant was less likely to break in a way anyone would have to clean up. What she meant was that my resilience had been used as a permission slip. I had survived things quietly, so it was decided without asking me that I could keep surviving them. I wrote her back eventually. Not forgiveness, not warmth, just, "I got your letter. I believe you knew. I don't know yet what I want to do with that." That was honest. That was all I had. The lake house needed work. Peeling paint on the porch, a broken step, weeds along the dock that had gone untouched for years. The first time I unlocked the door and walked through it alone, it smelled of dust and old wood and something faintly familiar I couldn't name until I was standing in the kitchen and I realized it was the same soap my grandmother used. I stood there for a while. On the doorframe in the kitchen there were pencil marks, heights, names and ages going back decades. Vanessa's name appeared over and over, circled sometimes, climbing the frame. Mine was there too, lower, fainter, the graphite almost rubbed away in places. Jasmine, age 8. Jasmine, age 10. Jasmine, age 12. And then nothing. Whoever was marking my height had stopped. I was still growing, nobody noticed, or nobody thought it was worth recording. I found a pencil in the kitchen drawer, stood up straight against the doorframe, made a mark, wrote my name and the year. Nobody was going to do it for me. That was fine. I was used to doing things for myself. People ask me what I lost. I tell them, I lost the family I spent 30 years trying to earn. The one where my mother hugged me without calculating what it cost her, where my father stood up for me instead of watching from his chair, where my sister was someone I could call when something went wrong. That family never existed. I was grieving a fiction. What I actually lost was the exhaustion of maintaining it, the permanent low-grade anxiety of waiting to be needed and dreading the call. The way I used to shrink myself in rooms full of people who were supposed to love me. I don't miss it. The lake house is quiet on weekends. I write on the porch when the weather holds. I drink my coffee and listen to the water, and sometimes I think about my grandmother, this woman who watched what was happening to me for years and couldn't stop it, but refused to leave me with nothing. She left me proof. She left me this. She left me something nobody could take. And they tried, and they couldn't, and that is the whole story. There's a question I used to ask myself in the bad years. What's wrong with me that my own family treats me like this? I don't ask it anymore. The better question, the one that actually has an answer, is this. When the people who were supposed to protect you treat your silence like consent and your kindness like a contract, what do you owe them when you finally decide to stop? Nothing. You don't owe them a goodbye. You don't owe them a confrontation. You don't owe them the performance of forgiveness before you've finished healing. You don't owe them nothing. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is walk out of a room full of people who are waiting for you to collapse and just not collapse. That's what I did. That's enough.